Forestry is our state's second largest industry. With over 14 trillion trees, not even counting urban trees, Georgia has more trees today than it did 75 years ago. Not only do our forests help to provide clean air, water, and wildlife habitats, it also has created thousands of jobs. What does that mean? The Georgia Forestry Commission has the answer. So tell me about the Forestry Commission. What is it?
Well, we're here to protect and conserve Georgia's forest resources. Forests generate over $35.2 billion for our economy. There's thousands of jobs, from the people who manage our forests, our foresters, to the loggers, to the products that come from trees.
Well, how did this all get started in the first place?
Well, really you could trace it back to colonial times. Back when they were building ships, they would come out and cut the live oaks to use for the structure of the ships. This is called the naval stores industry. And that was really our first forest industry in Georgia.
If there were no forests, what would happen to our Georgia industry?
Well, I mean, our economy would take a significant hit. We'd lose many, many jobs. We would lose our exports. Really, the whole world would feel a hit without the forest products that Georgia provides.
Forests are among our original, longest lasting renewable resources. We have the natural resource. Trees are part of our natural environment and integrate the use of the other natural resources, soil, water, air. Then we have the human resource, the people who make up the forest industry, whether they be individual landowners or consulting foresters or people who are in the timber business. And then there's the capital element, which is all the businesses, the sawmills, the paper mills, all of the investment that is made to transform the raw product into something that is of commercial value. We're constantly finding people who come up with new uses for products and lead to the creation of new industries. And then there are those who start up the businesses. Most of our consulting foresters we'd probably consider entrepreneurs because most of them are self-employed.
Really, you can be an entrepreneur in nature as well.
That's correct, very much.
Lots of other states have forestry and a timber industry, but as far as literally the volume and the economic impact, this is the center, this is the breadbasket, not only of the Southeast, but also the whole country. If it wasn't for the private land ownership, we'd be in dire straits in terms of the supply. Most of the wood and wood products comes from private land ownership, which is another facet that a lot of younger people perhaps don't know. They figure most of the wood must come from federal lands or maybe the state-owned properties, and some does, but it's certainly not the majority.
When you think of a forest, what may come to mind may be a state or national park. But here in Georgia, more than 90% of our forests are actually privately owned. That's right, Georgia alone has more private acres of forest land than any other state in the nation. So we're actually here on the Bembry farm, which, that's your last name. Does that mean you own this land?
My family and I do. Most of the forest land in Georgia is privately owned.
Wow.
And it's up to private forest landowners to be good stewards of that land. We grow these trees, obviously one ultimate benefit is some of them will be harvested. The log to be used for lumber or building products.
I think a lot of people think when you cut down a tree that it's a bad thing, but I've learned a lot that it's a good thing.
Feel free to print your emails because paper is a good thing. It is a product, it's biodegradable. It comes from trees which are renewable and sustainable, and it's all part of the cycle.
This is beautiful. You brought me down to the river now, but what does the river have to do with forestry?
Well, it's really important because the river was the first transportation route we had for harvested timber to get to the market or to get to a sawmill. This is the Oak-Mulgee, both the Oak-Mulgee, the Oconee, and they come together to form the Altamaha. They were a major conduit for commerce back in the 1800s. When the timber was cut, it'd be dragged by mules down to the river. The logs were all hooked together into big rafts, and they'd float them from here all the way down to the coast. The fall line, which divides the state into the Piedmont versus the coastal plain, is where the topography changes, so it's more hilly. And the rivers up there are rockier and swifter, and no way you could even get a log raft up them, but that made this area more amenable to developing the forest products industry.
Timber! That's a a commonly known phrase for watch out for that falling tree, but the word timber actually means much more to the forestry industry. And when it comes to forest products, it's only the beginning. This looks awesome out here. Where are we?
We are in a timber harvesting site.
Timber harvesting? What does that mean?
Well, we are the ones that come in here into a forest just like this, and we are the ones that have the equipment that cuts the trees down, takes all the limbs of them off, and puts them on the big trucks and hauls them to the mills. All trees can be a renewable resource, and especially pine trees. Pine trees are planted in rows just like crops, and we manage them just like farms. Instead of harvesting every year like a farm usually does, we actually let it grow to a specific age, and based on the markets available in your area, that depends on when you harvest. There's over 10,000 products made from wood. Primarily the product that is getting hauled out of this track is going to the sawmills, which is making lumber for various needs.
You mentioned timber, and I know I've heard the word lumber used as well. What's the difference there?
Well, timber is before it gets turned into a product. Lumber is one of the products from timber. So I deal with the timber side. I deal with the logs before they are produced into a certain product. Our company is a third-generation logging company. It was started by my grandfather and my dad. Back then, you were doing it with a chainsaw. Now, with me being in it, we have this big equipment out here that does it with intense speed, and it does it with intense accuracy. And it's just a whole scaled operation to where it's high speed nowadays to where it was more of a slower go back then. And as a logger, some of the practices that I personally try and uphold is the BMPs, and that's your best management practices. When you move onto a tract of timber and you're getting ready to harvest it, you need to pay attention to the streams, and you have safety management zones, which are called SMZs. You have to leave a certain buffer and barrier so you won't cause that stream to have any sediment running off into it, because if it was bare, it could harm the environment.
Trees are strong and versatile, and that's why building with wood is a good idea. Interfor is a sawmill and remanufacturing company here in Perry, Georgia, and one of the world's largest lumber producers. Everything seems to be pretty well oiled here at Interfor. How long have you guys been around?
Interfor has been around for over 50 years. We serve 30 markets around the world from our operations. We're close to the markets that need lumber, and so it's easy for us to get our product to markets and to customers. Interfor has 7 operations in the state of Georgia. Those 7 mills, we produce about 1 billion board feet of lumber on an annual basis. And for perspective, in Georgia, there's about 3 billion board feet produced in the state, which Georgia is the largest lumber producing state in the nation. We know that trees are strong. They're 80 to 90 foot tall, and they can withstand strong wind and storms, and so we're just using the same strength that a tree has in the forest, and we're manufacturing it into a board where we can take it to a building site and build things and make things out of it. Our business is dependent on trees, and we're dependent on having a steady supply of logs coming into our operations. So when we purchase logs from landowners from their privately managed forests, that gives them an incentive to continue to manage that land in a sustainable way. And that sustainable way is planting trees back where either themselves or the next generation coming behind them can enjoy the same returns and the same profits off of that land that they received. There's not probably a day that a child or a student wakes up and hasn't touched a forest product that was created here in the state of Georgia. For example, ours, they wake up in a house, right? And our lumber behind us, there's a really nice chance that our lumber is being used in the frame of that house to hold it up.
There are hundreds of ways that trees make their way into our daily lives, going way beyond what we see in the forest. Next time you're home, take a look around, because you might be benefiting from some trees of your very own.